Good afternoon and welcome to the Virginia Family Network February's Lunch and Learn. Today we are joined by Beth from Form Family Forward. In just a second, I'll let her kind of introduce herself and she can kind of tell more about what she's going to be sharing with us today. But lately, what's been coming up a lot is just people wanting to know more about respite and what it is. So that's what we will be talking about today. Okay, Beth, and you can introduce yourself and take it away.
Okay, so this is not, I'm sorry, there's already like a little technical difficulty. This is not the first slide having problems. There it is. Did I do that or did you do that?
You did that.
Okay, sorry. I have no idea how I did that. Okay, sorry. We'll get through this. Okay, so I do want to say that my colleague, Kelly Henderson, will be joining us for part of this because she has a little more expertise on some of the waiver issues. And I have more expertise on the day-to-day facilitation of respite care. So she will hop on, I think, closer to 12.
Perfect.
Okay. So, yeah, so my name is Beth Spivak and I work at Form Families Forward, and I can tell you a little bit about Form Families Forward. We are a family-led resource center in Northern Virginia, supporting foster, adoptive, and kinship families who are raising children, youth, and young adults with special needs. And we also support the professionals who work with our families. As an organization, we offer free trainings, consultations to families. We host events. We have a lot of resources on our website that you can check out. We can help with systems navigation. We have peer support groups for foster, adoptive, and kinship parents. We host webinars. We have youth classes, trainings. We have some positive parenting classes that we're doing. We have a lot of videos about trauma and trauma-informed practices and other resources on our website. Right now, we do have some openings in some youth classes, so I want to point that out. And then our Spring Forward, which is our big foster, adoptive, and kinship family fun day. And I guess I should say, in case someone doesn't know what kinship care is, that's when a relative or a friend or someone close to the family is taking care of a child because their parents can't do that. So that's a really awesome day if you're a part of that community or you're a professional who works for that community. And it's a lot of fun and it's good for parents to get to, or caregivers and parents get to work together and sort of be part of a community. So that's I guess the first slide. So the learning objectives for today. Oh, I can see that Kelly is on. Kelly, are you on?
I'm
okay.
here.
So that I'm going to let Kelly introduce herself because she hasn't had a chance to do so.
Hi, I just logged in still, or I'm sorry, it's not quite new. Did you want us to go ahead and start? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I've done the first slide, Kelly. So
awesome.
I just want to give you the chance to introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, I'm Kelly Henderson with Form Families Forward. I have the honor of directing the organization. So today, Beth and I are mostly Beth, but we're going to cover the definition and purpose of respite care. We're going to think about what we might want to seek out in caregivers as we seek respite care. We're going to offer you up some resources and hopefully have some questions and answers.
All right. Thanks, Carrie. All right. So what is respite care? And this is this definition comes from the Child Welfare Information Gateway, and respite care provides parents and other caregivers with short-term childcare services that offer temporary relief and improve family stability, reduce the risk of abuse or neglect. Respite can also be planned or offered during emergencies or times of crisis. Respite may be available to foster kinship and adoptive families, as well as birth families in need of support. So respite is basically something that caregivers can use or hopefully find if they need support because they're having a difficult time. So the purpose of respite care is really to provide caregivers with a break. And there's nothing specific that you need to do during that break. The break should be spent doing whatever you need to make yourself a better caregiver. So that can mean doing self-care, errands, even being in the house and doing chores when your child is in respite care. You can spend time with other children because we know that sometimes children with special needs require more attention, and that can put stressors on the other children. You can spend time with your partner, go to the movies, do whatever it is that you need to do during that time. So again, there's really no right or wrong way or time to spend the time that you get. And really, it's really critical to not feel guilty because that break that you get will make you more present and able to cope with the demands of raising a child with special needs. So if you can get respite care, then use it and know that it's making you a better caregiver. So I'm going to let Kelly do this slide because she's a little more knowledgeable about some of the waiver issues.
So again, thanks, Beth. There are lots of avenues. Unfortunately, there's not one great reservoir of resources that we can all just sort of turn to. So you really do need to explore lots of avenues within your particular community and based on the needs of your situation, your child, and your family. So up in the upper right-hand corner, I do remind folks to definitely tap into their private health insurance if they have it, and or their Medicaid provider. Their managed care organization may have options for providing some level of coverage for this, even if you are not on a waiver. And we'll talk about what that is. So just a reminder that is definitely an avenue to tap first if you're looking at paid respite services. And then I think we always want to start in our world of disability and mental health services with our most natural supports. So look around you, don't be afraid to ask folks to step in, step up, to cooperate, maybe pair up with another individual who's in your neighborhood, who walks a similar path with the type of children that you have, who may be more comfortable in caring for your child, and you may be more comfortable caring for their children because of your experience personally and professionally. So definitely look at that as sort of your first glance. Who is in your world that you could maybe seek out and develop some new relationships with, maybe formalize something that could benefit everybody involved. So beyond that, if you happen to be fostering a child, your foster care agency should be a go-to in terms of helping you find that those avenues of respite. Often, foster care agencies, and this applies to both the public agencies or our departments of social services and our therapeutic foster care agencies or TFCs, have mechanisms for hiring or contracting with like weekend respites or short-term respite foster care, who can provide, like I said, an evening or an entire weekend of care. And these are folks that have been licensed and certified and have gone through the training. So meet the requirements of the agency in terms of a temporary short-term placement. They also can facilitate sometimes within those foster care parent or resource parent communities, some exchanges, because you're all already certified, you're already licensed, you're ready to go, and you may already be in community with these folks. If you have a child in your home that came to you through adoption, it is really important to know that the Virginia Department of Social Services has a post-adoption consortium, and there are 4 regions of that consortium. And so you want to find your region, I will I think I can paste in the chat these links, and I'll do that as we continue on. So that's a really great place to turn if you are in a post-adoptive situation, is to check out what your particular consortium is offering. I can speak to Northern Virginia Consortium has offered a number of family days, family events where they're covering the cost of admission, covering cost of any fees for rental equipment, that kind of thing, and the whole family can go. So that's a form of respite in that it is a planned activity, but you are indeed with your child for that. And that has mostly been a outcome of I think the COVID era. So they may be moving into more traditional respite at some point, but that's just Northern Virginia. There may be other areas around the state that have different mechanisms for providing that post-adoption respite services. If you have a child who is receiving Children's Services Act services, and often you might know this by being involved with a FAPT team, that sometimes is the way that folks sort of connect with that. They don't necessarily know that they're accessing Children's Services Act funding, but they know that they have a FAPT team. That is a really great avenue for going to the team and sharing your needs in terms of the respite demands and expectations that you have, and talking about what contractors they have in their area that can provide respite. So again, the idea is that public agency, the Children's Services Act agency, contracts with private providers in the area to deliver services that support the family and support that child who has significant emotional behavior needs, and that can include respite. If you are a family who is raising a child with a developmental disability or other intellectual disability who is receiving a long-term care Medicaid waiver, that is another avenue for support. If they are, in other words, you're off the wait list and you are actually on a waiver, you can access those services, and you would work directly with your support coordinator to find out who can provide those services based on the type of waiver you have, number of hours they might be giving you, and who can help provide that. That can be consumer directed, where you're finding someone and they support that person, and or they are working with an agency or private provider that can actually just deliver those services under contract. Faith communities is another really robust, in some areas, avenue. There are communities of worship that will support significant or less significant options for respite. It could be a parent's night out once a month that you can take advantage of. Obviously, you would probably want to connect with them in advance and make sure that they're equipped to deal with the needs that your particular child brings. And then places like up here in Northern Virginia, Jill's House has an extremely robust respite program that is a outgrowth of the McLean Bible Church in Northern Virginia, and they have overnight respite, they have weekend respite. That particular program is limited to individuals, children and young adults with intellectual disability. So again, you have to sort of assess the menu of options and make sure that they fit for you. And then disability specific or disability focused organizations like the ARC in your area or the Autism Society may be really great places to sort of check in with and see where they might recommend you go in terms of respite options. And I'll work to put those in the chat, Nicole.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. So we thought we'd go over some considerations for respite care. So one of them is that if you don't know the provider, so if it's not a family friend or a neighbor or someone, a daycare provider that you know, someone you're familiar with, you may want to ask for a current background check. So at Form Families Forward, we have facilitated several respite programs in the last few years, mainly because of COVID. So these are kind of some lessons that we've learned from those respite programs. And also I facilitated a respite program at a foster care agency. So that's sort of some of the things that we would have a caregiver look out for. So background check, if you don't know the provider, is really important, because at least you'll have some basic knowledge that the person does not have a criminal record. And also just knowing like what to expect from respite care. So it can be really like long or short. It can be one time or ongoing. So it can be, for it, like how Kelly said, for a couple of hours, it can be a weekend, and sometimes it's even longer. And depending on the situation, one thing that's nice is if you have ongoing respite care, if it can be with the same provider or the same family, because then the child is comfortable, and then you don't have to do so much transition planning. Care can be provided in your home, but in a provider's home, or even at an organization, such as a place of worship or a daycare facility. So in that case, you have to decide, what you're able to get in some cases, and also what works better for your family. And also think about your child's special needs and explain to them, explain those needs to the provider. And you can even make a list, because what you don't want to have happen is have a provider, regardless of it, if the provider knows your child or doesn't know your child, you want to make sure that the provider is comfortable dealing with the needs of your child, because if the provider isn't, then it's probably not going to work out that well. Your night could be cut short, your weekend could be cut short, or your child could have a bad experience. So you really want to be upfront and honest, and make a list, and have a really clear conversation about the needs of your child and whether that provider can accommodate those needs. And then also be clear about your expectations regarding how the time with the child should be spent. So example, if you have rules around electronics, or if you'd prefer that the child goes outside or does crafts, I think you need to be clear about your expectations, but also not super rigid, because things happen during the course of a day or that time. And you want to make sure that even if it's not exactly what you had thought it would be, that everybody is happy, and it doesn't turn out to be a bad experience. So you may need to have a little flexibility in your thinking. And then also the idea of preparing your child or youth for respite care, especially if your child is not used to you being away. So providing your child with a developmentally appropriate understanding of the change in caregiving. So it's going to look different for every family and every child. So going over what that's going to look like, talking about it, just explaining to the extent that you can that something different is going to happen. And you can prepare the child for the transition, especially if you're leaving them in an unfamiliar place, or if you're leaving the house. Again, if this is new and not something you've been able to do, especially since COVID, you want to try to make sure that transition is smooth. So you can practice the transition. You can talk about it. You could draw pictures about it, anything that's developmentally appropriate for your child, but you probably want to prepare the child so it doesn't come as a complete surprise. And then if you can't even leave the house because the child is so dysregulated, then you're not going to get as much time, or you're not going to be able to leave the house. So practice as much as you can. And then also try to keep familiar routines and transitions to the greatest extent possible. So talk to the provider about what the child's expectations are. You could have a list, write it down. So for example, have familiar foods in the house, maintain a consistent bedtime or other scheduled activities. And if you need to change those the times or anything, then try to developmentally, in a developmentally appropriate way, explain that to the child. So you can cut down on the confusion. And I think that's what we had for what we wanted to go over. I don't know if there's any questions or anything like that.
So there's no questions in the chat. I'm putting all the great resources that Kelly has sent here over to the Facebook chat. And so they can get all of these great links too. And when we met earlier in the month, as I was saying, part of what Virginia Family Network is trying to do is make a respite program, and not necessarily where we are going to be able to provide respite, but being able to help find the resources and help with some of these, navigating these things that are coming up, where to find support, how to make it easier, that kind of thing. So this was kind of a first step into what respite is. We have found that people have heard of it. They're not always sure what it is. And then they're like, I understand, like, I can leave, but my child has all these needs. So a lot of what you were speaking about was very helpful to know that these are people that already know that our kids have extra needs and extra things going on, and they're ready for that. I think it was a really good idea, kind of like being able to have a game plan laid out. And I think that's great, even if parents are using other family members, friends, if we're doing this like kind of babysitting co-op, I'll watch your kids, you watch my kids, but here's what my kids tend to do on a typical day. Because every family is different. The way that my child may deal with stressful situations is very different than another child. So I want to thank you both for being here. I think you have given tons of excellent resources. And again, I'm going to get them all over onto the Facebook side so everyone can share in these. Kelly has made them all live links for us, which is great. So much easier when you can just click something than try to type in all these words and backslashes and stuff. If any questions come up, please either reach out to myself, put them onto Facebook, and I will help the best I can. And if I don't know the answer, I now have people that will definitely help me find out where to find the answer for you. So again, thank you for spending parts of your afternoon with us, and I hope everyone has a really great day.
Thank you
Thanks,
for having
Nicole.
us.